Part 8. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 71. Chapter 71. Tired and happy. You didn't do it on purpose? Did your sister deliberately knock herself into a rabbit mouth? Old Mrs. Lee was merciless and frightened her two reckless grandsons. Jian and Jiaxi couldn't see how seriously their sister was injured, so they thought that their sister would become like a rabbit and have a three-petal mouth. They cried louder and louder, as if the sky was falling. Everyone in the family couldn't help laughing, even with the good news, but their mouths hurt when they laugh. She is not a real child, so how can she hold grudges over such a trivial matter? So, she reached out and ran towards the two naughty boys. Mrs. Lee said, "Stop crying, come here and give me a hug. Your sister is so good. She's not angry even if you throw her like this." Jian and Jiaxi quickly wiped away their tears and ran forward. The two of them were holding their sister's chubby little body, feeling even more uncomfortable. "Grandma, we must take good care of my sister in the future." "Yes, I will never leave my sister behind again." Jian endured the pain and kissed each of them on the face, and the little storm was over. The family has income again, and it is so abundant. Everyone, old or young, was happy, and the lunch was very sumptuous. Stewed a smoked rabbit, cut a piece of pickled bacon and fried cabbage, steamed a large pot of rice, and also made egg soup. Jian and Jiazishi didn't even raise their heads. Once a bowl of rice is in your hand, it will be gone in the blink of an eye. Zhao Yura quietly gave the rice in her bowl to her son. "Half a young man, I am a poor man." Mrs. Lee was feeding her granddaughter egg custard and thinking about it in her mind. Jia and Jiaxi is 10 years old this year. Although it is a false age, she is actually more than 8 years old. The family always has to plan their future. Jia enjoys eating happily and has no idea that their days of crazy fun are about to end. At night, the whole village fell asleep. As usual, this is the busiest time for the Lee family. The watering in the fields cannot be done without manpower, so the only one who is binding vegetables at home tonight is Mrs. Lee, who brought home an Jiaxi. There is also good news that makes me drool when I sleep, staying by my side. It's really tiring to put water and cut vegetables. This little baby of hers was on overload. Orange Mrs. Lee was worried about her granddaughter, who fell again during the day. So, she put 2 chairs together to form a small cradle. A mattress was spread in the middle, and my granddaughter put it inside. It was safe and comfortable. Occasionally, when she is free, she can shake a cattail leaf fan for her granddaughter. In addition to the green vegetables tonight, there is also a pot of cherries. Jian's family likes to bundle vegetables and drool at the same time. Mr. Lee was so funny that he picked up a few cherries for his grandson to satisfy his craving. "This thing is too valuable. If you sell it, the money will be of great use to your family. Just taste it. It will rain in a few days. You can eat as much as you want. Don't worry, we know." "Yes, we don't eat secretly." The 2 boys were so happy that they never looked at the pot again. Old Mrs. Lee couldn't help but sigh. In this world, there are constant natural and man-made disasters. In previous years, children would just lie on the tree and eat cherries as cheaply as they wanted. Now it's actually a valuable thing. When good news is picking cherries, I am impatient to pick. There are cherry leaves in the pottery pot, and some bad fruits. But Mrs. Lee did not intend to pick and clean. This thing is willing to rot if it touches water, so it can only be eaten immediately after washing. Grandparents and grandson have been busy most of the night. All the vegetables are packed in baskets and the roosters crow. Li Lao and Li Laosi also rushed back from the fields and they were about to set off immediately. Otherwise the villagers would be in trouble when they got up early to fetch water. The big green mule worked very hard, so Mrs. Lee specially prepared a cabbage for it. Daking ate a big meal and set off in high spirits. Because of the cherries, the sales are better today than yesterday. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the mule cart returned. The income was 14 taels, which was put into the money box by Mrs. Lee. The whole family is full of heart, excited and happy. Silver is the lifeblood of the whole family. They never imagined that they would leave their hometown and come to a foreign land. There are still such good days. Hong Ying, make more steamed egg custard at noon and cut into pieces of meat. I'm too tired from work at home recently, so I need to eat better. Replenish your strength. Old Mrs. Lee couldn't hide the joy in her eyes. Now we don't need these things at home. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru both laughed and responded loudly. At lunch, the family ate even more delicious food, but the old men next door were confused. The Li family is struggling. Are they planning to eat one meal and miss another meal? The old man wanted to ask the Li family, but he was stopped by Uncle Zhao. He comes in and out of the Li family the most, so there are some vague guesses. The Li family must have some way of making money, otherwise they wouldn't be so wasteful. They don't need to dig deeper and just hope that the Li family will get better and better. So, the old men worked harder to water the water at night. The saber that had been treasured for many years was also taken out to prevent wild animals from the mountains from coming down and harming the crops. Because within a radius of dozens of miles, the Li family's field is still a little green. In the rest, the mountains and forests have all withered and turned yellow, and the crops of each family are completely hopeless. Everyone seemed to have drunk dumb medicine and remained silent. They don't know what to say, or they have no way to ask for help. When I came to Li's house to fetch water in the morning, the yard was extremely quiet. No one is gossiping, no one is joking. Only the Li family is still busy. Rest during the day, carry water to water crops, and pack vegetables into baskets at night. More than a dozen taels a day, this money was earned like running water, and the money box was filled up in almost a few days. The mood of the Li family is extremely contradictory. Hoping for rain to come soon and end this drought. Secretly, I wanted to hold on for a few more days, so that I could sell my home for more money. Jiyan is also very tired. He is busy filling water, cutting vegetables, and picking cherries every day. Even so, we still have to think about food for the family and replenishing the body. She took out a lot of meat from the refrigerator in the small courtyard, and almost only fish and shrimps were left. She reluctantly caught one of the hens in the yard. Fortunately, the old hen that lay down in the nest earlier was very helpful. Today, more than 40 fluffy chicks have joined the big family. The young and old of the Li family steamed eggs, scrambled eggs, stewed meat, and stewed chicken every day, constantly taking supplements. But even the strongest Li Laozi is much darker and thinner. In this way, another half-month passed. Finally, one afternoon, a few white clouds came from the sky. Everyone stared intently, not daring to speak, and not daring to hold firewood to cover the sauce vat. The rules passed down from the elders are not to catch the rain. It means rushing to do things before it rains, and it is easy to scare the rain away. I don't know if there is any scientific basis, but at this moment, there can be no mistakes. The whole village is extremely quiet, silent, and heavy. No one had eaten dinner, and sat in the dark night, waiting quietly. Finally, a bolt of lightning pierced the sky, followed by a sudden heavy thunder. The big raindrops fell from the sky, hitting the roofs, the treetops, and the fields that had been dry for a long time. Woohoo, we're saved. I don't know which woman was the first to cry out, which completely aroused everyone's pain and ecstasy. At night, countless people ran out of their homes, shouting in the heavy rain. It's raining, it's raining. Even more people knelt on the ground and kowtowed frantically, not knowing what they were thanking for. The children rushed into the puddle and rolled around hard. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed flowering. Chapter 72. Chapter 72. Greed has no end. Every member of the Li family also ran away. Jia and Jiaxi raised his hands and ran wildly in the yard, while the others rushed to the fields in a swarm. In the past 2 months, their shoulders were almost worn out by the carrying poles, but they could barely prevent the crops from dying from drought. At this moment, sweet rain fell from the sky. The dry land has been moistened, and all the cracks are like open mouths, trying hard to drink the rain and restore life. It's saved, it's saved. No more carrying water. The crops are saved. The old men next door were tending the crops, so they simply knelt in the fields and waited for the rain. At this time, they cried even harder. Originally, it was a good thing that they gave the land to the Li family for farming. They hoped that the Li family would grow more and harvest more food, so as not to have so much land empty, which would be a pity. They also have someone to rely on and their life is easier. Who would have thought that there would be a severe drought at the beginning of spring? If there is no harvest, the Li family will keep them in vain. Doesn't this give them an advantage? So, they hope the drought will pass quickly than anyone else. Now that it has rained and the crops have been saved, no one is happier than them. Old Mrs. Li held her granddaughter in her arms and wiped her tears under the eaves. Jian was a little dazed from sleep, yawning a little, and turned to look at the cheerful rain falling. The first thought in her mind was that the price of food was going to be reduced. However, the vegetable garden in the small courtyard of the space will also be harvested. It's okay to stop at this moment. The heavy rain continued for half the night, and it did not stop until the thirst of the long-term dry land was completely relieved. Every family did not care about the mud and quickly tidied up their gardens. Replant the green vegetables first. Once they grow, you won't have to go hungry again. The naughty boys from each family ran to the river in a swarm, and soon they came back in a swarm. There is water in the river. There is water in the river, we can catch fish. The villagers couldn't help laughing and scolding, of course there is water, it's all rainwater from the mountains. The water from the south will come down in a few days, and I'm afraid it will be even bigger. The woman held her son's ears and muttered, "Stay away from the river. The river will flood you and sweep you away. Let's see who saves you." "Oh, I got it, mother." The naughty boy responded well, but he still couldn't help but run to the river again and again. At this time, it was already the end of June, and replanting grain was out of the question. Even in the fields, we can only grow cabbages and radishes, not even sweet potatoes. Because the growing season is too long, there will be frost before harvesting. People are always like this, and their desires are hard to satisfy. They were looking forward to rain. As long as it rains, they can replant some cabbage and radishes. As long as the whole family does not die of hunger, they will be satisfied. But now that they have planted cabbage and radish, they begin to envy the Li family. It has only been raining for 3 days, and the crops in the Li family's field have begun to grow wildly. Look around and see a patch of fresh green. I really want to gather this crop and put it in my own field. However, this is just a thought in my mind. Let's not say that the Li family has the favor of sharing the water, just look at the hatchets and sickles in the hands of the Li family's children and grandchildren. Everyone, regardless of whether it is true or not, greets the Li family with a smile. Early in the morning that day, Li Lao drove to the city to deliver groceries. This is the last car, and it will be sold out just in time for Manager Joe to settle the bill. As expected by Good News, the price of vegetables dropped on the second day after it rained. Li Lao was reluctant to part with it and insisted on selling a few more cars. Today, Mrs. Li made the decision by slamming the table. For the last time, she took the account books into the city. Li Lao-san and Li Lao-si both want to go to the fields. The rain from the sky relieves the thirst of the crops, and similarly, the weeds also benefit. It has only been a few days, and it has already grown taller than the crops. If it is not removed at this time, the nutrients of the crops will be robbed. Orange Mrs. Lee stopped her son and daughter-in-law and said, "I've been thinking about something these days, and you should also listen." Li Lao-san and Li Lao-si both sat down. "Mom, what's going on?" Ji-Yan made a fuss about going to the field, and Mrs. Lee put her granddaughter down. Let her hold her knees and practice walking slowly around the chair. She then said, "The whole village has been hit by the disaster, and all the crops have been destroyed. Now only our 30 acres are still there, and they are getting better and better in the past few days. It's really eye-catching. As time goes by, I worry that someone will look at me and get jealous. It would be bad if something happened." Li Laosi stared at him at that time. "Mom, don't worry, I go to the fields every day. If anyone dares to be evil, I'll beat him to death." Li Lao-san also said, "Mom, we must go to the fields frequently." Old Mrs. Lee shook her head. "There is no way to guard against thieves for 1,000 days. If someone really wants to cause trouble, you can't guard against it?" Ji-Yan grabbed the handle of the chair and nodded. Mr. Lee was so funny that he continued. "Our family has 30 acres of land, which is quite a lot this year. The grain tax has been exempted. Whatever we collect is our family's. 15 acres of land for the whole family is enough. The remaining 15 acres of grain harvested in the autumn will be sold. These days, my family sells vegetables and makes a lot of money. Our family is not short of money from selling grain, so why not let the news out now? Let's lend food to the villagers in autumn." Li Lao-san and Li Lao-si looked at each other. Li Lao-si asked as his brain became brighter, "Mom, do you want to tie up the whole village and follow our family to look at the crops?" Mrs. Lee smiled. Her son was not too out of ideas. "Yes, now everyone is jealous that our family has food. If we share it with everyone to tide over the difficulties, then the crops in this field belong to the whole village. But we are not afraid of harm from people, and there are dozens more people to take care of it together." "Mom, you are so smart." "Yes, this is a good method." Li Lao-san and Zhao Yuru both agreed, but Tao Hongying said it. "Mom, borrowing food is a good thing, but don't we all need to write a receipt and fingerprint it?" Mrs. Lee nodded. "When the second brother comes back, we will invite the village chief. Write a document, and whoever lends it will sign and have his fingerprints printed." The matter was settled and everyone went to work. When the sun turned to the west, Li Lao came back with his mule cart. He smelled of alcohol, and it was obvious that he had drank a lot. "Mother, I invited Manager Joe and Officer Lu to have lunch at the tavern." Old Mrs. Lee asked without blaming her son. "Has the settlement been settled for the same week?" "Yes, Mother, I gave him all the food money for today. This is not enough, so my son added 8 more taels." Li Lao felt a little distressed, but thinking that his family would get more, he let it go. "You go and sober up, there will be big things happening later." Original Mrs. Lee evicted her family and Ngxi went to invite the village chief. The village chief has been busy lately, replanting seeds, guarding against wild beasts coming down the mountain, urging the villagers not to be lazy, and the few families staying here have to move out. Suddenly he heard that the Lee family was inviting him, so he hurried over. "Sister, has someone harmed your crops? Which is jealous, I'll kick him to death." He spoke out to defend the Lee family, making the Lee family happy. Li Lao quickly helped him sit down, and Tao Hongying served tea. The village chief was confused and didn't understand what was going on with the Lee family. "It doesn't look like you're being bullied." Li Lao took out a piece of paper. Half of the article was filled with words, and the other half was blank. "Uncle, there is something like this. Wait until I read this deed to you." The village chief became more and more confused, but as soon as Li Lao read a few sentences, he stood up suddenly. "The tea was spilled all over my clothes, and there was no time to wipe it up. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 73. Chapter 73. A difference of one word makes a huge difference. Your family actually wants to distribute food to the people in the village. It's not about sharing food, it's about borrowing food. Mrs. Lee responded with a smile. The village chief's face turned red with excitement. Whether it's sharing or borrowing food, it's a great thing. Every family is worried about not having food in the autumn. Your family is really the reincarnation of a living bodhisattva. This saves the lives of the whole village. Li Lao quickly comforted the old man and wanted to help him sit down. But the village chief couldn't wait for a moment and waved his hands repeatedly. Wait a minute, I'm going to call all the families in the village. After saying this, the wind blew under his feet and he ran away. In less than a moment, more than a dozen families in the village gathered in the Li family yard. Since it rained, the wells in the houses have water again, and they are busy replanting, but everyone has not been here for a long time. At this moment, they were suddenly gathered together, and everyone thought that the village chief was taking them to thank the Li family for delivering water earlier. Unexpectedly, the village chief said that the Li family would lend food to each family in the autumn. This is simply a great joy. Some people shouted at that time, seriously. This is great, we don't have to buy food in the autumn. It's okay if your family has money to buy it, but my family can't even afford it. Everyone is complaining non-stop. They are worried if it doesn't rain, and even more worried if it rains. The village chief banged his pipe and pot and shouted loudly to everyone. Shut your mouths and listen to me. During the previous drought, we all relied on the Li family's well to survive. Now that there is no food, the Li family has offered to borrow food in the autumn. Such a good family settled in our Qingshui village. Our Qingshui village is simply lucky, we can't let people down. He coughed twice and continued. In this case, I will make the decision and ask Mr. Li to write a receipt. Each family will write their name and fingerprint the amount of grain they borrow. Next year, each family will pay 10% more as interest if they borrow grain. Because food will definitely be as expensive as gold this year. They don't sell a single grain, but lend it all to everyone to survive. You can't pay back the same amount next year. That's so heartless. Do you agree? Agree, agree, the villagers nodded quickly. No one is stupid, and everyone settles accounts quickly. Even if the price of food has tripled, it would be a good idea for the Li family to ask them to pay back double the amount next year. Unexpectedly, the Li family asked for 10% more talent, which was just like borrowing for nothing. Someone was grateful and said loudly. From now on, when you are pulling weeds and harvesting in the fields, you will all call me one. Since my family also needs to eat food, I should work harder. Yes, me too, call me for work. For a while, everyone else responded, and the village chief nodded with satisfaction. That's it, the matter is settled. Don't be greedy and borrow too much. The Li family can only allocate 15 acres of land. After all, there are many people in their family, and there are 6 of them, Lao Zhao, who will all eat together. Woolen cloth. With 15 acres of land, a family can get almost 1 acre of food, plus the radish and cabbage replanted in the field. Even if we tighten our belts a little, we can barely survive until next spring. For a while, Li Lao rewrote the deed. The village chief is the guarantor, and the heads of each family come forward and put their thumbprints on their names. Their names are written with the amount of grain borrowed and the amount of grain returned. Clearly, plainly. Everyone in the Li family stood under the eaves and watched quietly. Ji Yin hugged her grandma's neck and really admired this old lady. With just 2 words of borrowing food, the entire village became allies of the Li family. After all, the Li family's grain must be harvested successfully before they can borrow grain. In the next 2 months, the whole village worked hard to help the Li family pull weeds and patrol to guard against wild beasts in order to obtain rations for the winter. Be more prepared to beware of other villagers coming to steal and destroy. From a family fighting against all coveting dangers, to a village united as one. It's just one word, but it's a world of difference. Sure enough, the villagers had hope, as if they had been given a shot of blood. Early in the morning, the Li family rushed to the field, and there were already more than a dozen villagers pulling weeds. The things in the field have come to an end, and Mrs. Li is in a good mood. While the house was quiet, he closed the door and took his granddaughter to count the money on the Kong. In the past, when selling vegetables, the most I sold in one day was 15 taels. Even the least one day is 12 taels. Sold for 14 days and earned 180 taels. Get rid of the 18 taels allocated to Manager Joe. The 20 taels used to treat guests to dinner left exactly 160 taels. Even with Mrs. Li's strong temperament, she couldn't help but have red circles in her eyes. Thinking about it, the family was worried about the eldest grandson's education. The whole family had to mobilize to spend 1 or 2 a month before they dared to decide. Nowadays, let alone 1 tael a month, even 10 taels can be afforded. And the good news is already rolling on the piles of silver. This is silver. She worked hard to plant and pull vegetables, and received the money in return. Mrs. Li was amused by her granddaughter. She hugged her granddaughter and kissed her twice. Grandma's lucky girl, my family will enjoy the blessings with you, Grandma will give you whatever you want. Jian immediately grabbed 2 silver coins. Mrs. Li smiled even harder and tapped the tip of her granddaughter's nose. This is all what you earned, you can take as much as you want, just leave some money for your brother to study. Jian just likes money and plans to save some slowly. Be prepared for what flowers will be used for when you grow up. Of course she won't be all round. So, with a flip of her hand, she threw 2 pieces of silver into the space. She began to nibble the fruit and had no intention of taking any more money. She is teething recently and her mouth is always itchy and uncomfortable. The fruit tastes good when chewed, and it can also grind your gums. She would take a few bites almost every time she had time. Old Mrs. Li couldn't help but feel a little surprised when she saw her granddaughter being so sensible. After I had collected my money, as soon as I went out, a carriage stopped outside the door. It turned out that Lu Biatu was the guest. This is a distinguished guest. Soon, Li Laosi came back from the fields, and Tao Hongying also started to prepare food and drinks. Biatulu is easy to get along with, and everyone in the Li family, young and old, likes him. Talk about gossip, eat and drink, and it was already dusk when it was time to send him off. Li Laosi returned to the house, his expression a little hesitant. Mrs. Li was busy bathing her granddaughter. Jian stepped up her calves and played with the water beside her, making trouble. Jian's family liked to have a water fight with his sister and help her take a bath, but Mrs. Li drove her away. Jian stuck out her tongue at her brother, causing Tao Hongying, who brought the water in, to laugh. This girl is really smart. She is not yet 1 year old, and she is already shy. We are grown girls, and we know that being shy is a good thing. In Mrs. Li's heart, her granddaughter is very good. Even if Tao Hongying is her mother, she can't say a word. Tao Hongying was so dumbfounded that she stretched out her hand to help her daughter take off her clothes. At this time, Li Laosi walked in and said, "Mom, I have something to say." "What's the matter?" Mrs. Li was confused. Jian also stopped patting the water and looked over curiously. Li Laosi hesitated for a moment and whispered. "The agency picked up an escort, which is very expensive. It's not easy to let too many people know about it, so not too many people can go there. Mr. Lu wanted me to go with him." There is also family righteousness, so it's best to help as well. Go and come back quickly, I should be back in 20 days. Before Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying could respond, Ji Yin's heart skipped a beat and she struggled to spit out a single word. No. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 74. Chapter 74. A dart that cannot be pushed away. The room was silent for a while, and everyone suddenly cheered. Oh, Fu Niuer can talk. Say one more thing, Fu Niuer, say one more thing. Old Mrs. Li hugged her granddaughter and kissed her hard. She was originally worried because other people's children started talking at 7 or 8 months old. But the granddaughter is almost 1 year old and there is no movement yet. Now that I finally spoke, it was great. Tao Hongying was also happy, holding her daughter's little hand and saying, "My daughter, call me mother, mother." Ji Yin was so angry that she really wanted to roll her eyes. Is this the time when she was happy to speak? How come no one thought about what she was talking about? No. She tried hard to speak clearly, but instead she just spitted out her words. Li Laozi was so amused that he laughed and joined in teasing his daughter. "Daughter, call me daddy, daddy." Ji Yin was almost furious. After brewing for a long time, he held back 2 words, "I won't go." These 2 words are extremely clear, and everyone understands them. Mrs. Li subconsciously hugged her granddaughter tightly and asked in a low voice. "Fu Niu, don't you want your father to go out?" Ji Yin nodded heavily, "I won't go." Like this, Tao Hongying and Li Laozi also stopped smiling. Tao Hongying, in particular, asked, "Daughter, do you know what? It's not good for your father to go out, isn't it?" Ji Yin could only continue to nod. Orange Mrs. Li blindly believed in her granddaughter without considering the reasons at all. She immediately said, "Don't go, forth. Go and talk to Lu, the head escort. Our family is not short of the salary now. Nothing is as important as safety." Li Laozi was a little hesitant. Men always have a bit of adventure in their hearts. What's more, he is born with supernatural powers and is good at bow and arrow. Walking around outside not only enriches your experience, but also makes you enjoy drinking and eating meat with the same group of men. Then I'll ask Commander Lu and see what he says. Tao Hongying felt irritated and opened her mouth to stop him. Second brother is going to the city tomorrow, just ask him to send a message. Li Laozi insisted, "No, that would be rude. Even if I don't go, I have to make it clear to Mr. Lu." Original Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying couldn't say anything. Ji Yin breathed a sigh of relief and lay on her grandma's shoulder thinking about something. It's not that she is superstitious, she really believes in the 6th sense. In her previous life, she escaped a car accident because of this. In this life, I was reborn into this fictional dynasty, and it also brought space. No matter how you say it, it feels a bit like the protagonist of a heroine novel. She, a heroine, is panicking and fearful for no reason, so something must have happened. As Grandma said, the family is not short of a few taels of silver now. Don't worry about whether her 6th sense is working or not, Daddy's safety is more important than anything else. Early on the next morning, Li Laozi picked some vegetables, carried them in a basket, and then entered the city. He did not go to the agency, but went directly to the home of Mr. Lu. At noon, Li Laosan was doing carpentry work in the Li family courtyard. Uncle Zhao's house next door is short of a few small horses. Originally, Uncle Zhao lived alone and had enough things. But now that there are 5 more old brothers, everything is 6th sense. Naturally a little nervous. This winter I have been eating on the Kong, but I don't feel it at all. At this time, when the weather was hot and I was eating in the yard, I saw that there was a shortage of horses. Jia and Jiaxi and the 2 of them didn't mind the heat, so they gathered around and helped. In fact, he is just making trouble, but Li Lao-san has a good temper and is not angry. Old Mrs. Li was holding good news under the eaves of the veranda, chatting with Zhao Yuru, who was picking wild vegetables. Tao Hongying came out of the kitchen and asked, "Mom, why hasn't the fourth child come back? Are you going to cook his food for lunch?" Before the words could be heard, Li Laosi came in from the outside. Seeing that the whole family seemed to be waiting for him, he felt a little guilty. How many years has Tao Hongying spent with him? Is there anything I still don't understand? She turned cold and went into the kitchen. Jiyan was also anxious, so he reached out to his father. Li Laosi hurriedly stepped forward to pick up his daughter, but he didn't expect his daughter's little slap to fall. He grabbed his daughter's hand out of embarrassment and apologized to his mother with a silly smile. "Mom, I'm afraid I really have to go with Lu. This is very important. If I don't go and only Lu is alone, I'm afraid it will be in danger." Old Mrs. Li was also angry. "You are afraid of danger to him, so you are not afraid of danger to yourself? There are seniors and juniors. If something happens to you, what will happen at home?" Li Laosi really couldn't resist, and when he spoke in a hurry, he lost his sense of control. "Mom, you have to have a conscience. I will rush to do simple errands that are not profitable. If there is really danger, I will stay at home. He is not my father, so I don't owe him anything he doesn't owe me. I can't be ungrateful." Old Mrs. Li's face turned pale, her mouth moved, but finally she sighed. She hugged her granddaughter and turned back to the house. Zhao Yuru and Li Laosan looked at each other and said nothing. Their men continued to work, but they obviously lost their energy. Lu Laosi regretted it greatly and knew that what he had just said was harsh. But it's hard to recover from overflowing water, and there's no use regretting it. In the room, Mrs. Li hugged her granddaughter and patted her every now and then. "Fu Niu, Grandma knows that your father has been ambitious since he was a child. If your grandfather hadn't died early, he would have gone out to make a living. He is thinking about his family and is afraid of being bullied at home. So he stayed at home, farmed and hunted." The old lady sighed, with a bit of sourness in her eyes. "After marrying your mother and giving birth to your brother, your father seemed to have no intention of making a career, but ever since he met Lu Biatu, something had grown in his heart again. As a mother, I feel bad for having wronged my son. But if he spreads it out, he is afraid that something bad will happen to him." He listened quietly to the good news, feeling regretful in his heart. Just because she had a bad premonition, she stopped her. The family was in disarray, Grandma was sad, and Dad was wronged. Is it a bit too much? There are no parents in the world who can control their children. It's hard to explain. In the end, Dad will still have to go out. Neither Grandma nor Mother can stop me. She sighed inwardly and closed her eyes resignedly. In fact, I was in the small space courtyard again, digging 3 feet into the ground to rummage. When she returned to her hometown to live in seclusion, she also considered safety issues. Prepare electric batons, anti-wolf spray, etc. But these cannot be used at all. Fortunately, there is a secret weapon at home. In her previous life, her grandfather was an old Red Army soldier who had seriously killed Japanese soldiers. And what the old man talked about most during his lifetime was that he killed a Japanese officer and captured a sword. With friends and relatives at home, I have all seen him, and often hear the old man showing off. Although Grandma secretly said that the Japanese soldier was on the battlefield for the first time and had no experience, so he died and was taken advantage of by the old man. But no matter what the truth is, this sword is left. Wrapped in old sheets over the years, it has been hanging on the wall of the cabin. I can't say, I'm going to take it outside for use this time. The sheets were opened layer by layer, revealing the bronze scabbard inside. The handle of the knife is wrapped with a snake leather strap, which is beautiful and non-slip. When you pull it out, the blade is sharp and the cold light penetrates. After reading the good news, I started to tidy it up. Fortunately, this is an imaginary dynasty, and no one knows about the historical grudges in the previous life. Otherwise, if this knife is exposed, I'm afraid someone will still say right and wrong. The old son, the eldest grandson, the lifeblood of the old lady. Old Mrs. Lee was nagging, and the more she talked, the more she thought about it. Just when I couldn't help but wipe my tears, there was a sudden bang next to me. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 75. Chapter 75, like a poisonous snake, waiting for the opportunity to strike. She turned around and saw a long knife on the Kong. She was so frightened that she was speechless and hugged her granddaughter tightly. Unable to hear the good news, he patted Grandma's big hand with his small hand, held it in for a long time, and then uttered another word, "Dad." The old lady blinked her eyes twice and suddenly understood. "This is for your dad, for self-defense on the road." Ji-Yun nodded and pointed to the door. Mrs. Lee really shed tears now and hugged her granddaughter and kissed her again and again. "Your father, he is not as sensible as a child like you. Fortunately, you are there, otherwise how would Grandma live?" Ji-Yun sighed inwardly, feeling even more sorry for the old lady. Being a family member is not easy, and it is fine if things go smoothly at home. But if something bad happens, the old lady will probably feel uneasy for the rest of her life. Li Laozi wandered outside the door for an unknown number of times, feeling extremely regretful. Lu Biatu was kind to the Li family, and there was nothing wrong with him wanting to repay his kindness. But I'm not wrong, there are old people above and young ones below. If something happens to him, what will happen at home? Tao Hongying came in from outside without taking off her apron. When she saw her husband like this, she gave him a fierce look. Li Laozi smiled quickly, guessing that his wife wanted to plead for him. But before the couple could speak, Mrs. Lee had already shouted from inside the room. "Lao Si, Hongying, come in." The couple quickly pushed open the door and walked in. Tao Hongying saw her daughter sticking her out and walking slowly on the window sill. She quickly got on the Kong and hugged her daughter up, fearing that she would fall. Li Laozi's eyes were stuck to the long knife on the Kong. Is this a long knife?" "Humph," Mrs. Lee snorted coldly and responded impatiently. "Yes, Fu Niu specifically said it was for you to protect yourself on the road." Li Laozi was crazy with joy. He held the knife in his hands excitedly and pulled it out of its sheath. The blade is more than 2 feet long, and it is so bright and dazzling. He held his breath subconsciously, stretched out his hand to rub the blade, and saw blood on his fingertips. Good knife, it's so sharp." Old Mrs. Lee took her granddaughter and raised her chin proudly. "It goes without saying that there is nothing wrong with what Fu Niu brought out. You ignorant father must come back safe and sound, otherwise you will feel sorry for Fu Niu." "Don't worry, mother, I will definitely come back early." Li Laozi put down the knife and solemnly agreed. Finally, he snatched the daughter away and rubbed her little face with his stubble. Ji-Yun was so angry that she grabbed her father's bun with her little hands, which made Li Laozi grin in pain. Orange Mrs. Lee and Tao Hongying both laughed. Tao Hongying took a careful look at the knife and felt slightly better. At this point, Li Laozi has decided to go out as an escort. But the family righteousness was not fulfilled. Mrs. Lee refused to let her go, and Mr. Lee also refused to take her with her. Before that, Lu Darthead didn't know that he would be so dangerous, and thought he had taken his son and apprentice to go out together. But when they came next, he regretted it. Just as Li Laozi was passing by, the two of them discussed it and decided not to take the 2 boys with them. With 2 people and 2 fast horses, they can go back and forth day and night on the road in 10 days. The speed is fast and the risk is minimized. Ji Yi was very disappointed, but thinking about how his fourth uncle would go out without anyone to protect him at home. Not to mention anything else, the 30 acres of crops at home are the only one within 100 miles. Even though people from the village are taking care of it, there is no way to prevent jealous people from other villages from causing mischief. Tao Hongying silently packed the package for her husband. She simply gave him a set of clothes, a pair of shoes, and then some medicine for wounds and pills for dysentery and wind cold. The rest are all flour cakes, made of fine thin noodles. They are dry and tasteless, but they can be stored for 3 to 5 days without fear of spoilage. Then use a bamboo tube to put a large bowl of wild boar meat sauce. You can stop and rest at any time on the way and have a full meal with it. Ji Yan also searched the space and found an old-fashioned military kettle and a military green satchel. The dark green pot body is somewhat mottled, but it is still strong and has a long strap. The satchel is 80% new. It looks a bit ugly but is practical. On the night of departure, Li Laosi changed into narrow-sleeved clothes and pants that made it easier to move. The left hand is carrying a water bottle, and the right is carrying a satchel containing clothes and dry food. Putting on the big hat, he looks really weird indescribably. No matter how worried Ji Yan was about her father's safety, she couldn't help but laugh on her grandma's shoulder. Old Mrs. Li didn't care about her granddaughter and told her son over and over again to be careful. Li Laosi kowtowed to his mother, touched his daughter's face, and then strode out of the house. Not far outside the village, Lu Biatu was already waiting on horseback. He didn't go in because he didn't want the horses' hooves to make the dogs in the village bark, and he felt ashamed of the Li family. If he had a choice, he would definitely not beg Li Laosi to accompany him. This trip is really too difficult. Before I picked up the escort, I agreed that it would be a banknote, which would be easy to carry and not easily discovered. But after getting the dart, he discovered that there were not only 100 taels of gold, but also a bag of precious stones. These things together totaled 5,000 taels, and they were so eye-catching. He thought for a while and found that the only one who could help and was trustworthy was Li Laosi. But for the Li family, it was asking Li Laosi to gamble his life, and he had no face to face it. Li Laosi got on his horse, took the gem bag handed to him by Lu Biatu, and carefully stuffed it into his arms. Then after thinking for a moment, he handed the long knife to Lu Biatu. He is better at bows and arrows, and the saber hanging on the side of the saddle is enough for self-defense. This long knife can play a greater role in the hands of a knife expert like Lu Biatu. Sure enough, Lu Biatu pulled out his long knife and looked at it, his face turned red with excitement. Where did this knife come from? It's such a good knife. Li Laosi also sighed when he thought of his mysterious and well-behaved little girl. As a father, he felt uncomfortable having his daughter to worry so much. But he couldn't tell the truth at the moment, so he answered vaguely. This is passed down from our ancestors. It seems that my great-grandfather had a brother who was a wanderer. It was too old and my family can't remember it clearly. My mother was worried about this trip, so she gave it to me for use. Once he heard that it was passed down from his ancestors, Lu Biatu's idea of buying it with a lot of money was gone. He couldn't put it down and touched it again and then handed it to Li Laosi. Li Laosi refused to answer, waved his hand and said, "Brother Lu, you are better at using a knife, you should carry this knife with you." Lu Biatu's eyes lit up. He wanted to refuse, but he really liked it too much. Such a good sword was the only one he had ever seen in his life. This time, with such a sharp weapon, he became more and more confident. "Good brother, then I won't be polite to you. I will return it to you when we return victorious." Li Laosi looked back at the dark village. There was only a little light in the direction of his home. He knew that his family was waiting for the sound of his horse's hooves. If they couldn't hear the sound of his horse's hooves, they might not be able to rest peacefully. "Let's go, Brother Lu," Go early and come back early. The 2 men and 2 horses quickly disappeared into the night, and ran more than 100 miles in one night. At dawn, the 2 of them rested under a tree, ate dry food and drank water. They felt that everything was going well and they felt much relieved. But how could they know that such a huge sum of money could be concealed in a small place like Junyang? Someone has been eyeing them for a long time, like poisonous snakes, waiting for the opportunity. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 76. Chapter 76, It Can't Enter the Tea Shed on the Roadside. The Lee family courtyard is actually quite lively even without the fourth Lee. But people, old and young, are all worried about it. If something is wrong in their minds, they will not be able to eat or sleep well. Jian doesn't know the reason, but children are the best at watching and are cautious when they are naughty. On this day, Jian returned home after a long break, finally adding a bit of joy to the family. Tao Hongying cheered up and cooked several delicious dishes. Mrs. Lee asked her eldest grandson to ask questions, for fear that he would suffer hardship in the college. Jian felt warm in his heart, teasing his sister with a gentle smile and talking to his grandma. When he first entered the academy, he was indeed ostracized and ridiculed because of his poor family. Especially when Wu Ergu went to ask for money, it was very ugly. But as time went by, he studied hard and had talent. His husband liked him and often praised him. Most of the classmates who lived together in the college were from farm families. After getting to know each other, they made a few quarrelsome friends. His reading life has become much easier because of these. This year there was a severe drought. During such a difficult time, the family did not stop spending money on him and even often sent him food. You must know that when there is fire from the sky, the college is not short of water, but it does not have the luxury to water the vegetable garden. So, the vegetables sent from home are simply too valuable. He honored his teacher half and asked Zhao Jian to cook the remaining half and invited his classmates to eat together. This made his classmates more kind to him and they got along more harmoniously. Whoever brings delicious food will be invited to eat with them. Mrs. Lee was happy and satisfied with the good news. She no longer had to worry about her brother being bullied in the academy. Jiaran's chubby little sister couldn't help but kiss her little lotus-knotted arm and asked, "Mistress, my sister will be 1 year old at the end of the month. Do we need to put wine at home?" Mrs. Lee nodded and took out her granddaughter's small jewelry box. The gold collar Mrs. son gave her had been rubbed several times. "When the time comes, I will put it on my granddaughter, set up 2 banquet tables, and invite everyone in the village to come and have a drink." But thinking about her son who was still outside, she sighed in her heart, and she didn't know if the 4th child could make it back. He will not be at home when his granddaughter's 100th birthday comes. It would be a real pity if she cannot catch up with her when she turns 1. Jiaran didn't know where his uncle had gone, but there was no way that escorts would not be dangerous. He wanted to say a few words, but he was worried that grandma would be even more worried, so he changed his words. "Mistress, our college has opened an elementary school class again, and I'm afraid we will have to recruit students in a few days. Our family is happy and safe. Do you have any arrangements?" These words were a shot in the arm, and they immediately brought back the old lady's mind from drifting away with her old son. Education class, it's great. Mrs. Lee was so happy that she took her eldest grandson's hand and asked him carefully, "How many children are enrolled in Mensu? Do they need to take a test in advance to choose a teacher? How many students are required to study? Can they live in the academy?" Jiaran was worried about his younger brother, so he asked about it before bringing it up. He said, "The monthly salary is 500 yuan, which does not include food and accommodation. You need to study day and night. The selection will start in early August. There will be exams, but it shouldn't be difficult. Old Mrs. Lee frowned. Her two grandsons both went to school, and they only had one tael per month, so the family could afford it. I'm not afraid of taking the test. After all, I've been studying at home for more than half a year. It's just that this day study is a bit troublesome. It's unrealistic to pick me up and drop off at home in the morning and evening. I still have to find a way. There's still nearly a month left. Let me discuss it with your father and your uncle. Jiaran nodded and did not persuade him any more. He is now providing for the family and is already very sorry. With two more younger brothers studying, the burden on the family is too heavy. Jian played with the wallet on his eldest brother's waist and felt worried after hearing it from beginning to end. I bought more than 100 taels for groceries earlier, which I thought was a lot, but there are many people in the family, and the expenses are really too high. I can't say, I still have to find a way to continue making money. The harvest will be done in less than 2 months, and the grain cannot be sold. It turns out that the fruits in the space courtyard can be picked again, and I will find a way to send them to Kyoto when the time comes. I just don't know if I can find someone who took advantage of me like last year and sold it for dozens of taels. Don't mention trivial matters at home, just say that Li Laozi and Lu Biatu ran away at high speed for 3 or 4 days. Seeing that they were still 100 miles away from their destination, both of them breathed a sigh of relief. Lu Biao looked into the distance and saw a tea shed at the intersection of a small town not far away, so he said, "Let's take a rest, eat some solid food, and then run there in one go." Li Laozi licked his chapped lips and nodded. The two of them arrived outside the tea shed and tied their horses, and the enthusiastic young man came forward to greet them. "Two guests, please come in and have a seat, the sun is too hot." As he spoke, he took the cloth from his shoulder and wiped the table. "Bring us a pot of herbal tea, not dry food." Lu Biatu looked around and saw no guests, so he didn't have any doubts. After all, it was too hot at noon. Everyone was hiding at home to enjoy the cool air, and no one was willing to go out and walk around. The boy responded loudly and quickly delivered a pot of herbal tea. Lu Biatu sniffed it, tasted it, and nodded. Li Laozi drank 2 bowls and then took a long breath, finally feeling a little relieved from the heat. Lu Biatu also drank a lot, and when he wanted to ask for another pot, the boy took out a pot of jelly, added minced garlic, soy sauce, etc., and stirred it. That jelly is probably made from japonica rice pulp. It looks white and is paired with blanched vegetables. It looks delicious no matter how you look at it. Lu Biatu swallowed his saliva and wanted to have a bowl, but Li Laozi took out dry biscuits and meat sauce instead. "Let's eat all the meat sauce, otherwise it will spoil." Lu Biatu also looked away and started eating with Li Laozi. Tao Hongying's cooking skills are particularly good. The fried meat is slightly dry and fragrant, and the sauce is also salty. Mix it together and serve it with flat bread. You will never get tired of eating it. The young boy Su sniffed the aroma of the meat sauce and stepped forward with a smile. "Two guests, where did you buy the meat sauce? We have newly added cold rice noodles in the store. It may taste better with this meat sauce." Li Laozi smiled and said, "I brought it from home, but there is no place to sell it outside. I'm afraid I will be disappointed." As expected, the waiter sighed and quickly filled 2 bowls of rice noodles. "I'd like to give these rice noodles to my 2 guests to try. There are no customers today, so they will go rancid if left alone. If it tastes good, I'll ask you to come back and take care of the business." Lu Biatu and Li Laozi looked at each other and shook their heads. "Thank you, brother. We brought a lot of dry food. It would be a pity if we didn't finish it. We will definitely try this rice noodle again next time we pass by." The boy looked a little embarrassed when his kindness was rejected, and he took back the bowl. Lu Biatu and Li Laozi ate quickly packed up their things, paid for the tea, and then continued on their way. Not far away, there is a hilltop with a small river at the foot of the hill. The two horses were a little thirsty, so they ran straight over and drank gulps of water. Lilaosi and Lubayatu also jumped down to wash their hands and faces to cool down. This journey has been hard, but fortunately the drought has passed, otherwise finding water to drink on the way would have been a problem. Yes, God is merciful. The two chatted for a few words, then picked up the horses and continued on their way. At this moment, something unexpected happened. A feather arrow shot out from the mountain forest and headed straight for the two of them. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 77. Chapter 77, Jedi Counterattack. Lubayatu pushed Lilaosi away, and instantly drew his sword and cut off the arrow. Lilaosi rolled on the spot, hid behind a big rock, then took off his bow and arrow and started to fight back. But the people in the woods are obviously masters. The two sides went back and forth, and the quivers were quickly emptied. Silence, an eerie silence, flows between the mountains, forests, and rivers. He was still a man in the woods, so he was perhaps more confident and slowly revealed his figure. They were three Jianghu people, all with long knives in their hands, and one of them was also holding a bow. The thin man on the far left is the waiter from the tea house just now. Lubayatu and Lilaosi both had chills running down their spines. Fortunately, they were not greedy just now. If you had eaten that bowl of rice noodles, you might have become fish meat on someone else's chopping board, ready to be slaughtered. The two of them looked at each other and walked out with their knives in hand. The guy sneered, with a bit of irritation in his expression. You two should be alert. If you had eaten my rice noodles, you would have been in trouble by now. The fat man next to him also echoed, that's right, why waste my time? It was the burly man who looked at Lilaosi and Lubayatu carefully with sharp eyes and spoke. Hand over the red stuff you have on you and I will spare your life. Lubayao subconsciously shook the package on his back with an ugly expression on his face. Originally, they thought their trip was very secretive, but in the end they were still targeted by Jianghu people. If the dart is lost and it doesn't matter, I will lose all my money and give it to the owner of the goods. Even if you can't afford the compensation, you won't lose your life. But these quacks have absolutely no morality to speak of. Whether they hand over things or not, they will probably die. He turned his head and glanced at Lilaosi, his heart pounding. He can die, but Lilaosi cannot. When he brought Lilaosi out, he had to take him back alive, otherwise he would be ashamed of the Li family even if he died. Brother, I'm going to stop them, you hurry up and leave at critical moments, you can throw things out, it's important to escape. He whispered a few words to Lilaosi, then picked up the long knife and rushed out. The three Jianghu people smiled contemptuously, and also raised their swords to greet him. But no one expected that Lilaosi suddenly pulled out two more long arrows from his boots. The gray tail feathers are the same color as his trousers, so no one noticed it. Moreover, the arrowhead is actually made of fine iron and shines black. He bent his bow and nocked an arrow again, just for a moment. The two arrows flew out together. The three Jianghu people didn't expect that he had a backup plan. They couldn't react at such a close distance. The guy was shot directly in the shoulder. The fat man ducked sideways, but his arm was also injured. Lubayatu was already prepared to fight to the death and cover Lilaosi's escape. I didn't expect Lilaosi to be so brave, and the hope of survival made him even more brave. And the long knife in his hand was surprisingly easy to use. He cut off the guy's long knife in just a few encounters. The blade of the knife even opened the man's stomach, causing him to scream and fainted from the pain. The other fat man and the burly man were so angry that they fought with him desperately. Lilaosi also threw away his bow and arrow at this moment and rushed forward to help. His swordsmanship is average, but he is born with supernatural power. He can even lead the fat man aside and fight without losing. The burly man's eyes were red with regret. He was really capsized in the gutter. Originally I thought it was just 2 escorts, but they were not careful in their calculations. It was not easy to intercept the goods. Without thinking, one brother was killed when he came up, leaving them 2 against 2, slowly falling into a disadvantage. He became more and more impatient, made a miscalculation, and was stabbed in the back by Lu Biao. Although he dodged most of the force, his clothes were still torn at the back and his skin was torn apart. The pain was so painful that his eyes went dark. Turning around to look, Lu Biao had already rushed to Li Laoxi's side, and they were holding the fat man down together. The fat man was flustered, and the knife was knocked out of his hand in the blink of an eye. Li Laoxi actually grabbed his belt, rounded him up like a stone, and threw him out so hard that he lost sight of him. The burly man gritted his teeth, dove into the forest, and fled for his life. Li Laoxi still wanted to catch up, but Lu Biao grabbed him by the head. Don't chase after the poor enemy, be careful as you still have a backup plan. Li Laoxi was relieved of his efforts and felt his hands and feet were weak. I usually hunt in the mountains, and at most I encounter wild boars, black bears, and the like. This is the first time that we have been fighting for life and death like this. If you are not careful, you will die. It is simply too dangerous. He was panting heavily, and sweat finally broke out uncontrollably, instantly soaking his back and hair. Lu Biao patted him on the shoulder, hesitated for a moment, and finally ran towards the fat man and the assistant with a long knife in hand. The 2 men were only seriously injured and not completely dead. At this moment, I wanted to beg for mercy, but my mouth opened and closed, and I couldn't say a word at all. Lu Biao was so cruel that he wiped their necks one by one with a knife and sent them completely to see the Lord of Hell. Li Laoxi felt mixed feelings in his heart and was endlessly afraid. Let's go dig a hole and bury them. Lu Biao did not dare to delay. Although they are robbers, it is still difficult to explain when they are discovered. Li Laoxi forced himself forward and together with Lu Biao, dragged the 2 of them to the foot of the woods. The soil here was soft, and soon the 2 of them dug a big kong, threw the 2 of them in, and covered it tightly. Finally, the 2 of them sat down back to back and breathed a sigh of relief. Brother Lu, what should we do? Someone ran away just now, are you going to find help? We're not afraid we'll risk our lives at worst, but if he goes to our house. Li Laoxi regretted more and more that he should have kept that man behind even if he risked getting hurt. Lu Biao was also worried, but still comforted him. Don't be afraid, people like this are carrying a lot of lives. There are many people who want their lives while they are injured. They shouldn't think of retaliating against us so quickly. Li Laoxi was still worried and said. Then let's hurry up and deliver the goods, and then go home early. Okay, I have to check when I get back to find out who the is this time. Bodyguard Lu was also so angry that he gritted his teeth. He was secretly sending the bodyguards, and leaking the news was equivalent to deliberately killing them. Logically speaking, there are only 3 or 4 people in the agency who know about this matter, and they all get along well with him. The 2 of them did not dare to delay any longer. They drank a few sips of water and then continued running wildly. When it got dark, they actually ran to the place. The 2 men guarded directly outside the city gate. When the city gate was opened early the next morning, they went in to hand over the goods. Then he purchased dry food supplies, fed the horses, and returned directly. Everyone in the Li family didn't know that Li Laoxi had just experienced the test of life and death, and they were still busy as usual. Orange Mrs. Li had a private conversation with Mr. Li and told him that he had been strictly teaching Jia 11 Jian recently. Li Lao heard that the college was going to open an elementary school, and he also knew that this was an opportunity for his nephews. As a result, the family's happy and peaceful life immediately became difficult, and I had to study in the morning and afternoon. The second uncle was unprecedentedly strict. He was slapped on the hand if he couldn't memorize the book, and he was slapped on the hand if he couldn't sit upright. Even if Jia 11 farts and Jia N laughs, both brothers will also slap their hands. Only at noon were they allowed to go out to play naughty things, but the sun gave them a headache. My friend is spending the summer at home, and he can't even scream. With no one to accompany you, playing will be boring. The two boys quickly withered and looked at their grandma pitifully, not daring to say anything. They just gathered in front of and behind them, expecting grandma to intercede. Old Mrs. Lee doesn't care about this. After feeding her granddaughter 3 meals a day and 2 small stove meals, the grandfather and grandson went for a walk at the entrance of the village. If there are villagers, they will chat a few words. If there are no villagers, they will look into the distance, hoping that Li Laozi will come back soon. This night, I saw the sky filled with red clouds, and the sky and the earth were dyed orange. It was very beautiful. Jiyan is holding her grandma's legs, watching happily. At the intersection in the distance, a horse-drawn carriage was approaching. The black painted flat roof looked very impressive. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 78. Chapter 78 Awakening at Night. Old Mrs. Lee's heart skipped a beat, and her legs felt a little weak at that time. It couldn't be that my son was injured and was sent back by carriage. Jiyan seemed unlikely, so he quickly climbed onto Grandma's lap and hugged Grandma's neck. Old Mrs. Lee finally came back to her senses and stood up reluctantly. Fortunately, none of the people sitting on the carriage shaft were familiar. When I got closer, the middle-aged driver did not move, but a middle-aged woman sitting on the right side of the carriage jumped out. Before she could speak, a low coughing sound came from the carriage. It seems to be suppressed with all its strength and unwilling to be heard. The middle-aged woman looked a little anxious and stepped forward to salute Mrs. Lee. "Mom, we are passing by your place and cannot go into the city at night, so we would like to stay here. Is there any clean and spacious house in the village?" As she spoke, she took out a piece of silver from her purse and wanted to hand it to Mrs. Lee. Old Mrs. Lee quickly waved her hand. No need, sister." She was a little wary at first, but she heard that these people were passing by for a stay, and there seemed to be patience in the car, so she couldn't help but think of her son who was also traveling outside. As a result, she became even more soft-hearted. "If you want to find a better family in the village, that's my family. If you don't mind, come with me." The middle-aged woman didn't expect it to be like this, and her eyes were a little wary. Mrs. Lee smiled and said, "Don't worry, my son is out escorting, and I've been thinking about him all day. I have nothing to do, so I brought my granddaughter over to see him. I'm not waiting for you specially." When the middle-aged woman saw the good news about the white, plump, and cute girl, she felt ashamed in her eyes. "Don't blame me, ma'am, our master is not comfortable, and slaves want to be as considerate as possible. It's not easy to go out." Mrs. Lee smiled and led them towards the village. On the way, the coughing in the carriage almost never stopped. Some villagers were having dinner in the courtyard, and out of curiosity they asked, "Auntie, are there guests at home?" Old Mrs. Lee responded vaguely, "Yes, you are going to eat now?" "I'm afraid our family hasn't prepared it yet." The villager smiled and said, "Yes, it's our team's turn to look at the crops tonight. Let's eat early and go out early." "Okay, in 1 month, the food will be brought home, and everyone will feel relieved." Mrs. Lee exchanged pleasantries, hugged her granddaughter, and led the carriage to her home. Tao Hongying was afraid that her daughter would be hungry, so she was about to go out to look for the grandparents. Suddenly seeing a carriage coming back, he quickly called Zhao Yuru. Li Lao Er and Li Lao San were talking in the main room. They heard the movement and went out to greet them. The middle-aged man and woman looked at Li's house carefully. The yard was clean, the house was neat, and the young and old in the family were well dressed. They were very satisfied. They could see that this was a well-to-do family that was going through life. Orange Mrs. Lee called to her son to open the courtyard door and welcome the carriage in. Middle-aged rickshaw drivers and women jumped out and greeted everyone. "I'm really sorry for bothering you all tonight. You are a guest when you come in. Don't be polite." Sister Mrs. Lee handed the good news to Tao Hongying, and then called Zhao Yuru. "Let a few boys sleep with you tonight, and the west room will be poured out for the guests. Go and tidy up first, don't neglect it." Zhao Yuru quickly turned around and entered the house. On weekdays, the house is always tidying up. Occasionally, Jiaran will come back and study and write in the west room. So apart from the east room where Mrs. Lee and Jiyan live, this is the best place for the whole family. At this moment, the carriage door opened, and the middle-aged coachman helped a man down. He looks about the same age as Li Laosi, but not as tall and strong as Li Laosi. He was wearing a sapphire blue brocade gown, a jade belt wrapped around his waist, and a gold crown binding his hair. He had handsome features and a bit of nobility in his eyebrows. But his face was pale, with an unusual blush on his cheekbones. He might have wanted to speak, but he coughed a few times and could only hold his hands. The Li family hurriedly returned the gift and invited their master and servant to come into the house. The three masters and servants have been looking at the Li family without any trace, and their expressions became much calmer when they saw that they were really enthusiastic and didn't have any dislike. You must know that when I stayed in Fukin before, when people heard coughing, they were afraid that it was an epidemic or consumption, and they refused to take him in. The fire pit in the west room is very large, with a new golden kong mat, and two large camphor wood boxes at the end of the kong. Several quilts were placed on the box, covered with clean floral sheets. Under the cabinet is a square kong table, with pens, ink, and books placed on the table. This surprised the three masters and servants. There are actually children studying in such a farmhouse. This is not just about being rich, at least the family has vision and courage. You must know that the Tianwu dynasty is now riddled with holes, and the road to the imperial examination has almost been cut off. Tongsheng and scholars can still take the exam, but the selection of electors and jinshi has been suspended for 5 years. This is almost a road with no rewards. I didn't expect that a farmer would actually persist. Old Mrs. Lee didn't know what they were thinking, so she spread the bedding with her own hands and invited the man to get on the kong to rest. "This noble man, please rest for now. My daughter-in-law is quite good at cooking. I'll ask her to cook some food and bring it over later. If you need anything, just let me know." The man nodded, and the middle-aged woman quickly said, "Our young master is taking medicine and has some taboos. I'll help him cook." "Okay, it just so happens that we haven't eaten either." Mrs. Lee didn't seem to guess her precautions, and followed her out with a smile. Tao Hongying originally cooked millet porridge, steamed Chinese cabbage buns, and fried tuna eggs. All the portions from the Zhao family next door were taken away, leaving only our own. But these meals for entertaining guests are a bit shabby. She scooped out a ladle of fine flour, kneaded it, rolled it out, and cut a piece of leaner bacon. 2/4 of an hour later, 3 bowls of shredded pork and vegetable noodles were ready. There are also 2 poached eggs lying in the bowl, sprinkle with chopped green onion, and light with sesame oil. It's simply delicious and delicious. The middle-aged woman has been helping to light the fire. Old Mrs. Lee hugged Jiyan and sat on the small bench at the door, chatting a few words. The 3 masters and servants came out to play in Kyoto, and they didn't expect the master to have an old illness on the way. The host's surname is Yet. The woman and the coachman are husband and wife. The coachman's name is Yeshan and the woman's name is Dongmei. They were all born in the same family and were trusted by their master, so they often served him around. Perhaps she was worried about her master's illness, but sister-in-law Dongmei didn't even raise her brows. The Li family could not persuade them, they could only make it as convenient as possible for them. Fortunately, Tao Hongying's craftsmanship is still as popular as ever. Dongmei and his wife ate all the noodles and added a few vegetarian steamed buns. Even the sick Mr. Ye ate half a bowl of noodles and drank up all the noodle soup. This made Dongmei and his wife so happy that they gave the money to Mrs. Li. Mrs. Li insisted not to do so. Her family was not rich, but she did not want to make money from this. Just a little effort, just a favor. But Jiyan was an exception. Her big eyes glowed green when she saw the rejected silver hairpin. It's a pity that no one cares about what she, a child, thinks. Everyone fell asleep soon, but in the middle of the night, there was a sudden commotion in the west room. Dongmei took the medicine bag and jar and boiled the medicine under the eaves. There were coughs one after another in the room, making everyone feel tight in their chests. Mrs. Li went down to have a look. Jiyan was curious and joined in the fun. The old lady carried her to the west room, and sure enough, Mr. Ye was sitting on the edge of the Kong and coughing non-stop. Seeing them come in, Mr. Ye probably wanted to say something, but as soon as he opened his mouth, blood sprayed all over the face of Mrs. Li and Jiyan. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 79. Chapter 79. The buyer finally got the idea. Mrs. Li shivered in shock and subconsciously hugged her granddaughter tightly. Mr. Ye was probably used to vomiting. He raised his head and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, but looked at his grandfather and grandson with a somewhat apologetic expression. I didn't want to, but Jiyan didn't look scared at all. Instead, he frowned, as if he was thinking about something. Yashin was throwing a cloth towel, but he rushed over in 2 steps and helped his master to lean against the wall of the Kong. Madam, I'm sorry. Don't be afraid, our master's disease is not spread from person to person. Old Mrs. Li felt a little uncomfortable. After all, no one wanted to be sprayed with blood, so she still had her precious granddaughter with her. But the person is so seriously ill, it would be stingy to care about it. She quickly went to the end of the Kong and pulled out the quilt and asked Yeshan to help Mr. Ye put it behind her. This disease seems to be serious. Do you need to call a doctor? Yeshan's brows were wrinkled like a knot and he didn't speak. Mr. Ye's chest was rising and falling, he was vomiting blood, but his cough became lighter. Old Mrs. Li couldn't stay any longer, so she said, I'm going to wash up first. If you need help, just call out. Yeshan quickly nodded and thanked her. Mrs. Li went back to the house and pulled off a cloth to wipe herself and her granddaughter clean, and then changed her clothes. She was still worried, so she told Jiyan, you go to bed first, and grandma will help. Jiyan nodded obediently and closed her eyes, but her mind was still spinning. She was very familiar with the symptoms of the noble person next door. If she guessed correctly, it should be lung abscess. In the winter of her previous life, she once fell into the cold river water. After she returned, she had a fever but ignored it, which eventually led to pneumonia. Pneumonia and coughing come back and forth, and it turns into this lung abscess. I remember that she also coughed up blood and was scared to death, thinking that she would not live long. But after going to the hospital, getting injections, and taking medicine at home, it will be fine in a month. If you don't eat too spicy food, it will have almost no effect on colds and fevers. But this is the Tianwu dynasty, and the medical level is too low, so it must be a fatal disease. She dug out a small plastic box that was kept alone in the small courtyard room. There were some antibiotics in it, which she had prepared just in case. As a result, she did not fall ill and came here. And the family entertained a noble young master who was staying at home, and it happened that he had this disease. Are there really coincidences in the world, or is everything predestined? Think about it carefully. Now the family has enough food and clothing. But it will take at least 5 or 6 years for the eldest brother to stand out and support the family's glory. During this period, what should you do if your family is oppressed? Not to mention the corn and potatoes in space, they are prone to disaster. Would you like to take a gamble and find a backer for your family? She tossed and turned, hesitated for a long time, and finally got off the ground. In the West Room, Yeshan was talking to his master. Master, I'm going to rush back to Kyoto and invite Dr. Zhang here. Your illness this time is too dangerous. The young man's voice was hoarse and he only said, Go, be careful. Yeshan hurried out of the door and didn't even see Jiyan, a chubby girl, behind the door. Under the eaves of the corridor, Mrs. Li was boiling medicine with Dongmei. Even when Yeshan left on horseback, Dongmei only said a few words and did not dare to leave the medicine jar. I have to say that she is vigilant enough. But she didn't expect that there was a little girl who was about to turn 1 year old in the house. Jiyan sneaked into the West Room quietly. Under the candlelight, Mr. Ye, who was sitting on his back, looked even weaker. If he hadn't coughed occasionally, people would have mistakenly thought he was dead. Jiyan stretched out her little hand and patted his arm. Mr. Ye slowly opened his eyes, looking a little dazed. The little girl is white and fat, wearing a red belly band embroidered with longevity. At this moment, he tilted his little head, with a red rope tied to a sky-high braid trembling, as if he was looking at him seriously, and the little adult didn't know what he was thinking. He couldn't help but slightly raise the corners of his mouth. What a cute child. Remembering the blood that had just been sprayed on her face, he felt a little ashamed. Fortunately, looking at this, the little girl was not frightened. He wanted to say something, but the little girl nodded suddenly and stretched out her 2 chubby hands. There are 2 small white things in one hand, and a 5-tael silver ingot in the other hand. Mr. Ye looked a little stunned and frowned slightly, not understanding what the little girl was doing. Moreover, the Li family doesn't look particularly wealthy, so why do they just give their children silver coins to play with? Jiyan was a little impatient and brought the pills closer to Mr. Ye's eyes. Is this person sick and stupid? Is it difficult to understand that he uses money to buy pills? After waiting for a long time, Mr. Ye still made no move. Jiyan was afraid that Grandma would come in and the deal would be interrupted. So she collected the silver coin and tried her best to stuff the pills into Mr. Ye's mouth. Of course Mr. Ye can't eat it. The origin of this thing is unknown, but this little girl is too weird. He turned his head to avoid it, but had no choice but to cough again. As soon as he opened his mouth, Jiyan stuffed the pills in. An indescribable bitterness and astringency spread in his mouth, making him want to spit it out immediately. But the little girl brought the water glass over. Perhaps because her little hands were weak, she almost spilled it on the quilt. He suddenly didn't want to vomit. No matter what he ate, how could a child under 1 year old harm him? Jiyan saw that he drank half a glass of water and must have swallowed the pills. She breathed a long sigh of relief and wiped away the non-existent sweat beads on her forehead. Mr. Ye couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth even higher, causing Jiyan to glare at him, and then he took out the silver pick again. Mr. Ye thought for a while and said, I have money and I can't take it from you. Jiyan fell down with anger and regretted everything in his heart. What kind of medicine should be given to such an idiot? He is so stupid. Mrs. Li went back to the house and could not see her granddaughter, so she chased her after her almost immediately. Seeing that her granddaughter was indeed here, she quickly hugged her and apologized to Mr. Ye in a low voice. I'm sorry, Mr. Ye, for disturbing your rest. This girl in our family is too naughty. Mr. Ye gathered his strength, shook his head slowly, and said with a smile. No, she's a very cute little girl, she still wants to give me money. Silver. Old Mrs. Lee quickly opened her granddaughter's little hand, and sure enough, the silver lock was still there. She was so surprised that she couldn't laugh or cry. This is really strange. This girl in our family is a little money crazy, and her favorite is gold and silver. When it comes to her, it's like entering a tiger's mouth, and I can't get it out. Why do you take the initiative to give it away? Mr. Yes slowly shook his head. It was funny, he couldn't guess what this little girl was thinking. Perhaps you feel sorry for me when I am sick. Orange Mrs. Lee glanced at Mr. Yes' pillow and saw a jade pendant placed there. She thought she guessed the reason, so she smiled from ear to ear. Oh, I understand, this girl is probably interested in your jade pendant and plans to buy it with money. Purchase. An idea flashed in Mr. Yes' mind. He looked at the little girl and finally understood. The good news made me want to scream to the sky. The buyer finally got the idea. If you take her medicine, of course you have to give money. Whoever gives away medicine and money is not stupid. She was afraid that Mr. Ye would let it slip and Grandma would find out about her little tricks. So she quickly yawned and hugged her grandma's neck tightly. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 80. Chapter 80, You are such an adult, but you bully a child. Sure enough, Mrs. Lee left immediately. Master, please rest, I'm afraid this girl is sleepy. Mr. Ye nodded, still looking a little stunned. Ji-Yun lay on her grandma's shoulder and walked out, giving him a grimace. Dong Mei just came in with the medicine. Mr. Ye came back to his senses, thought about it and asked. Dong Mei, do you remember anything when you were 1 year old? 1 year old, Dong Mei replied, not knowing what the young master was thinking. No, sir, a child cannot remember anything until he is 4 or 5 years old. Mr. Ye looked at the door, his expression getting weirder. Dong Mei thought that he expected the doctor to come earlier, so she advised him. Don't worry, young master, it's only 300 miles away from Kyoto. Das Han will definitely be back in 2 days. After saying that, she handed the medicine bowl forward. Mr. Ye hesitated for a moment and then pushed the bowl away. Don't drink it anymore. This medicine is just for cough relief and has no use. Dong Mei also knows that this medicine only temporarily suppresses the disease and cannot cure the disease at all. But the master had been vomiting blood so badly that he felt unsure if he didn't take medicine. She still wanted to persuade him, but Mr. Ye lay down. Dong Mei had no choice but to put the medicine away. Early on the next morning, Tao Hongying got up early and got busy. Everyone in the family knows about the fuss in the West Room last night. But no one knows medical skills, and no one can help. At this time, it is also a good thing to cook some delicious meals so that the patient can eat a few more bites. She cooked the white porridge until it was soft and blooming, and served it with scallion oil rolls as big as a child's fist. He scrambled eggs with green cucumbers and added spinach with nuts. Just a simple and delicious breakfast, light, but very suitable for Mr. Yes' appetite. He drank half a bowl of porridge, ate a flour roll, and half a plate of vegetables. After putting down his chopsticks, he tried to walk on the ground and felt much better. Dong Mei was also crazy with joy. It was a good thing to be able to eat. Only when you are full can you have the strength to recover from illness. Sir, the daughter-in-law of the Lee family is so awesome, her craftsmanship is even better than that of our aunt. It's been a long time since I've seen you eat so much. Mr. Ye nodded, who would have thought that he could find such a nice family just by looking for a place to stay. At this time, the door of the room opened, and Mrs. Lee came over with Ji-Yun in her arms. She was also happy to see Mr. Ye looking good and eating enough food. That's good. If you take care of it for another 3 or 4 days, you'll be gone from any disease. Dong Mei kept thanking her, causing Mrs. Lee to wave her hands, roll up her sleeves, and help her pick up the bowls and chopsticks and send them to the kitchen. Leaving the good news behind, he was scratching the edge of the Kong and looking at Mr. Ye carefully. Since he was ill last night and the light was poor, Mr. Ye also did not take a good look at this little girl. Looking back now, although he is white, fat and cute, he is also an ordinary child. If it's strange, it's the eyes. To be precise, it's the eyes. This kind of scrutiny that falls on him is not what a 1-year-old child should have. Jian is not afraid of being seen through. She was prepared when she planned to sell medicine. She was just a child under 1 year old, and the whole family watched her come out of the mother's belly. No matter how much we checked, there was nothing fishy about her. She tried hard to climb onto the Kong, but her short legs were really not strong enough. The edge of the Kong is raised, but the feet are off the ground, like a monkey stuck in a tree. If your arm is loosened, you will definitely fall on your butt. At such a critical moment, Mr. Ye is still watching the excitement. How stupid! Jian glared at him fiercely and shouted, "Help!" Mr. Ye came back to his senses and laughed after seeing clearly. He bent down and gave the fat girl a hand, and apologized quietly. "I'm sorry, it's not that I didn't help, it's just that I didn't notice it for a while." Humph, Jian wrinkled her little nose, trying to express her displeasure, but she didn't know that this look was so cute. Mr. Ye couldn't help but raise his hand to pinch her little face, but Jian's chubby hand slapped her down. Jian took out the silver thorn from last night and waved it vigorously in front of Mr. Ye's eyes. Mr. Ye could not help but laugh more and more, and asked in a low voice, "Is what you gave me medicine last night? Are you here to ask for money for medicine?" Jian nodded vigorously, but the little fat man had poor balance and almost fell over again. Fortunately, Mr. Ye helped him. Jian blushed, thought for a while, then put her little hand behind her back and took 2 pills. At this time, Mrs. Lee and Dongmei came back from the kitchen, and the sound of voices could be heard. Mr. Ye quickly took the pill and threw it into his mouth. He picked up the warm water on the table and drank it. Orange Mrs. Lee entered the house and saw her granddaughter getting on the Kong again, so she hugged her quickly, not wanting her to disturb Mr. Ye's rest. Jian's eyes widened in anxiety. He didn't get the medicine fee, so he had to pay for 2 more pills instead, right? Mr. Ye couldn't help it and was amused by the little girl. Dongmei was confused when she saw him. She didn't know what happened to the young master suddenly. Mr. Ye didn't want to explain, so he ordered, "I'm afraid we have to stay here for a few more days. You go to the city to buy some food. Don't let the Li family lose. In addition, bring back another 300 taels of silver. Remember to ask for 5 taels of silver each." Dongmei quickly agreed and agreed very much. After all, at times like this, she didn't dare to move her master. Original Mrs. Lee would not refuse when she heard that their master and servant wanted to stay for a few more days. Li Lao had someone to take care of him at home, so Li Lao-san hitched a mule cart and took Zhao Yuru as a companion to accompany Dongmei into the city. Jian was lying on the big Kong in his house, his belly bulging like a toad with anger. Suffering a loss, really suffering a loss. Obviously it is such a handsome noble son, Lila Silver, grab the child's pills. Mrs. Lee didn't know why her granddaughter was angry. She wanted to take her out for a walk, hoping to play with the children in the village and learn to speak more. As a result, the village chief came over at this time. He originally heard that guests were coming to the Li family, but when he went to talk to some guys next door and passed by, he found that the carriage had not left yet. So he came in to chat and ask what was going on. Old Mrs. Lee didn't hide anything from him, she spoke carefully. "We were originally guests who came to stay at home, but the guests were not in good health and became serious last night. We had to wait for their doctors to come to their homes for diagnosis and treatment. I decided to keep them for a few more days. After all, it is not easy to be away from home. The village chief nodded, finally relieved. You are a kind-hearted family, and it is good luck for this guest to come to your home. After asking a few more questions, the village chief comforted the fourth child before he came back. The fourth child loves Funiu the most. He will definitely come back when Funiu turns 1 year old. Yeah, I know that too, but I can't help but worry about it in my mother's heart. After saying a few words, the village chief went next door. At this time, Li Laosan drove the mule cart back from the city. Zhao Yuru was the first to jump out of the cart, grabbed her mother-in-law and said, "Mom, sister-in-law Dongmei bought a lot of things. I stopped her, but I didn't stop her." Old Mrs. Li didn't take it seriously. Their family didn't plan to ask for any money. It was considered thoughtful for the guests to buy some food to supplement their own food. I didn't want to, so I just carried a dozen baskets off the mule cart. This many is too much. Half a fan of pork, 5 live chickens, a basket of eggs, and a bucket of live fish. 100 jin of fine japonica rice and flour, and 4 jars of vegetable oil. There are 2 baskets of other bits and pieces of food, including snack boxes and various candies and snacks. Most of the baskets are filled. Sister, have you moved the market back? Old Mrs. Li teased Dongmei and really didn't know what to say. Dongmei held a box in her hands and smiled. Old sister, we have already caused trouble to the family by coming here. We can't let your family have any more food. Hongying is good at craftsmanship. If you buy more chicken, fish, meat, and eggs, we will all benefit from it. Old Mrs. Li thought about it and didn't refuse. Well, I'll let Hongying think about the food carefully and give Mr. Ya a good supplement. After saying a few words, Dongmei picked up the box and returned to the house, just in time to meet Ji Yin, who came out to watch the excitement. End of this chapter.